Welcome, everybody. It is Thursday again, my happy day, because I get to spend the next hour or so with my dear friend Maurice. Once again, we're in for a surprise of where this conversation is going to go. So welcome, Maurice. It's good to be back here with you.
Well, as always, it's good to be with you.
Yeah. Anyways, it was a crazy week last week. We didn't get in our interview because I should say interview, our chat. I think the election was like a crazy thing. And then we had a ton of snow here in Santa Fe. So a big storm came in and we were dealing with all of that. And things just got a little bit, and I just wasn't in the space. So I called it off and said that we would jump in this week with everything. So I guess we have to start with Maurice, and we have to talk a little bit about the election and like if there's any perspective you want to share. It's been an interesting journey for me, especially dealing with some people around me that have very strong feelings, one way or the other about it. I've tried to share like a little higher vision about it. Sometimes that goes over and sometimes that doesn't go over with people.
Very true. Very true. Of course, I don't talk to hardly anybody around here. I do have David. I don't know what the hell to call him. He's a friend first, but he's been living here and for the last damn near 3 years, and so I get to talk to him, and he's of the same kind of a like mind. He could be sitting here talking too with us. He's that kind of a guy anyway. Let me see. What was I going to say? Son of a gun. There's the election, but I wanted to say something else before that. Oh, I know what. Yeah. Last week you had that really cool interview with that lady friend of yours there in Santa Fe. I should have looked up her name. I forgot. But I really enjoyed listening to her. She had one hell of a job trying to explain what she was trying to explain, because I know about that too. And that stuff, you can say all the words in the world and it does not really touch what it really is. But there's an old, I guess it's a Buddhist saying, God, it might be some other further back than that, might even be Hindu for all I know. I think it's Buddhist. We're not the finger pointing at the moon. When we talk about stuff like this, we're like a finger pointing at the moon, but the finger isn't it? It's something else. And we're doing our damnedest to try and put it into words. And it's always insufficient, but it's a clearer picture than a muddy picture, a completely muddy picture, or, completely blacked out. It's like I say, she did a fine job because she just did a fine job, and my compliments to her.
She did. We actually filmed that interview a couple months ago when she was here. We did a whole series of interviews, and then I forgot to post that one. And I remembered last week I hadn't done anything. That interview from Dr. Maria Zayas, who's a very dear friend of mine, and it's super articulate woman and just a deep, deep thinker on things. Yeah. And and very spiritually minded, but also practical as a therapist, psychoanalysis and stuff.
Grounded. Grounded. And that you have to be that way. You can get too far up into the atmosphere. Then you become what we used to call a space cadet or an airy fairy. Another way of expressing it.
I can definitely have those conversations with her where we can just riff off on just high level things, spiritual things. But when it comes down to talking about stuff, she's very cognizant of her role as a therapist and a teacher and a mentor. So she always tries to get things right in to explain things as a clinician. She doesn't like to step out of that. I push her out of that sometimes in our conversation.
Well, that's between you and her, and that's a different thing. But when she's trying to actually talk to people in general who she doesn't know specifically, that's that ability to be grounded makes it relatable to people. You can. Carl Sagan was another guy years ago. he had a TV program. He did the best darn job of explaining the universe and physics and astrophysics and all that stuff to what we would call the common man, which would have been me and people just like me and you, for instance, in that field, because we don't know the details. We didn't study it for 10 years and stay in the career field. That's a specialist knowledge. And he had the ability to take all of that complex stuff that he heard from his teachers and what he knew and made it understandable to the what we would call the average person that was interested in at least listening. That's being what that's what grounded is. It keeps you in the ability to relate back and forth between the worlds.
Yes, so true, Maurice. Because I think a lot of times with people that are involved in like the awakening community, not woke, the awakening
Right, I
community,
know
and
what you
they're
mean.
really
Sure.
into figuring out what's really, I don't even want to say truther anymore, too. I don't want to even use labels on it. But I think when we get a certain level of understanding and where the scales have been, taken off of our eyes and we're starting to see things more clearly, that the challenge is how do we represent ourselves and our knowledge to other people? How do
Yeah.
we cross that bridge? I've got some clear feelings how I do that. For one is I never impose anything I'm thinking or feeling or understanding or revelation I have on another. I don't impose that. I always wait. I may ask, present a little something, then I wait to see what the interest is. And if there's any interest, I'll, give a little bit more and try to explain as simple as I can. And then wait to see if people even ask more. Because sometimes people just out of politeness, right? They'll say,
Mhm.
oh, that's interesting. Tell me about it. And they really don't
Right.
want to know, or they want to know just a little bit. So you give them just a little bit and they're like, okay, great. Well, look at look over there or whatever. There's a parade over here. They don't really, there's not a genuine interest. And this is, I think, the thing that has changed as I've gotten older. When I was younger, there are so many things I believed in. And because I believed in them and I didn't know them yet, that I wanted to talk about them. I wanted to share with other people. I was trying to convince myself. I'm trying to get agreement with other people. I'm trying to work it out, and as a woman, I verbally would work it out, try to work it out with other people, but I would be very outspoken on things. The older I've gotten is like the less I care to talk. In fact, I don't even care to talk about that. A lot of my close friends don't know anything about me, and then they watch my YouTube channel and they're like, oh,
I
oh,
didn't know
I didn't know that. You're into that? Because if it's not pertinent to the conversation, I mean, I don't hide myself or my views, but I don't feel like I know what I know and I'm confident in what I know, that it's right for me. And if it's right for you or not, that's your business, right?
that.
Like,
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. Or I think that really happens a lot, that people really get super excited about the stuff that they're starting to see, and they can get overly zealous about it in wanting to have other people see.
Right.
Good intention, but you just can't. People, they're either ready or they're not, and there's nothing you can do about that.
You learn. You find yourself listening more than you ever did before. That's what you end up doing, and then you just join in. You're not the leader of the in a way you are, but you're doing it. You're leading from the rear is what you're doing. Literally, you're watching you're feeling the flow. You're listening. You're feeling all of your senses are active in a conversation, and you're really intent on what's being said. But you're listening at more than one level. You're at the surface level because that's what they're expressing in people talking, in conversation. So you got to know where they're coming from. What language are they speaking? So you can respond to them in a like language, so they'll understand the response as it's meant. And that's another, little sidetrack here. Language, holy mackerel, the meaning of words. We take for granted the surface meaning, and my God, here we go again. But you start looking into the background of the etymology of these words, and you find out, holy shit, they're just the opposite of what we think they are. And then
Oh
you
my
say,
God.
well, at a certain place in a certain time, that other meaning is what they're meaning in their little specialized conversations. Uh, Nice.
Well,
Good
I
to
think
know.
that's the trip up right there. I think when you're talking about Carl Sagan, and I remember when he did his shows that he really broke things down to common language. And
Mhm.
that's the tricky thing is when you get talking to somebody, you're using a language that you're familiar with because you watch all the YouTube channels or you've been researching this stuff for years and years, but other people don't have that understanding. So we have to be really, I feel very sensitive to the words we use and how they
Right.
can be misrepresented, how they're going to land with the other person. I try to do that and hopefully to some degree of success in most of my videos is I try to present things. I get in the whiteboard out and I try to break
Yeah, I
things
like that
down in a
whiteboard.
way.
You have a good way of that works well with you and for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is one of my gifts is being able to work with language and being sensitive to what would be helpful to the other person in clothing it in a way that they can understand. But I love what you said about, leading from the rear and I believe that that's just, I mean, some people aren't that type of personality where they're going to be more comfortable, but there's the personalities that are more outspoken, they're more A personalities,
Hmm.
which I'm totally that, obviously. But I've learned over time is to just in a group, I actually am more comfortable now is listening and really like I want to listen to other people. I want to get to know them. I
That's how
as
you
opposed
do
to
it.
me sharing me, I want to hear from them as opposed to trying to hear myself talk.
Well, there's another little truism. Damn, I got so many of them along the way. It's unbelievable. But uh, when you're talking, you're not learning anything. It's in the silence is when information comes in. When you're expressing yourself, there's nothing coming in. You're just expressing your energy outward, 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 which is fine. It's required actually in an interchange and an interaction. But generally, just knowing that, I say, if I want to learn more than I already know, I don't consider myself the epitome of all knowledge everywhere at all times. I might shut up and listen. Maybe I'll learn something. Is a more kind of lower level or surface level way of expressing it to the common man that would understand that. A guy working in a plant somewhere, a janitor. I used to be a janitor along the way. I did that kind of thing because that's what I had to do, and I freaking did it. But oh, I just lost the track. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well,
I
it's
I
just
forgot it.
I think this is just really such good words of wisdom. They say we have two ears and one mouth. We need more for listening.
That's another one. That's good.
And we have all our other senses. When I'm with people, I want to get to know it's like, why is this person in my life? Why am I attracted to them? Why you're sitting, I've spent a few weekends now with some mutual friends of ours, some wonderful women up in Cuesta and the Red River area. And these beautiful women have come into my life. Well, I want to get to know, who they are and why they're in my life. Why am I, what's the synergy there? And I can only find that out by listening and asking questions. And it's far more entertaining,
Yeah, yeah.
listening to somebody else than to do, be doing your, even though it's, I
And
participate.
that's another thing I've noticed through the years across the board in the many states that I've operated within as I went. People like to talk about themselves, so let them. They'll tell you.
Mhm.
And if
Yeah.
you're paying attention, and the more more you that's how you learn about them. You find out, are these my friends? Are they not? What are they honest? Are they not? What's their concerns? What aren't they? And the one thing I've also noticed, everybody I've ever met, I've never, to my knowledge, I have never met what I would call a robot type person. Nobody is that one dimensional, that shallow, that unfeeling. Every single one of them are humans at some point, at some level. Now there's levels of understanding and sophistication and knowledge and specialization and all of that. But across the board, I just find that people they want pretty much the same thing. And I know that it's maintained, and we see images of them all over the place of the monsters of the world that seem to be heartless, careless, And actually, some situations require that. You can't be you can't be a successful warrior on the battlefront and have emotion and compassion and love and all that, or you'll be dead.
Yeah,
So,
totally. Yeah.
that's how come the higher up they go in the military, the more callous they appear. Doesn't mean they're not internally sensitive and everything, but where they find themselves, that's an inappropriate response to be in the positions that they are. Now, if their internal mechanisms say, I can't do this anymore because it creates too much conflict, then they walk away. But most people, they have all kinds of these inducements. In case in point, I know somebody, I won't identify exactly how closely they are related, but he works for FEMA. But the thing is, he's been in the federal government since he was probably, in his early 20s, because he was in the military for 8 or 9 years. And then he got out and he got into the federal government. Well, there's a hell of a lot of people that have done that. Honest, hardworking people. But now he's in his fucking late 40s or early 50s. I think he's still in his late 40s. But so he's got like 25 years, maybe or 30 years even in the military. And he's got the accumulated retirement. He's within 4 or 5 years of full retirement. And he looks around, he sees what the hell is happening, and he hates it. But what's he going to do? Is he going to walk away from that? Not if he's got responsibilities, which he has. He's got a family. He's got a household to maintain. So that's the problem. And some people have walked away. Generally speaking, people just suck it up and they do their jobs as best they can under the circumstances. That's why we've got so many people walking around this society leading lives of quiet desperation.
Yeah.
Literally.
Well, it's, you can be in the world, but not of the world.
You can.
And what comes to mind is having, and I call them like sacred boundaries, but just boundaries. You can take the sacred out because it's all sacred, but just like having the right boundaries and not having your boundaries become walls. So many people, like you're saying, they have to cut certain parts off because of the job intent, whether it's in warrior mode or corporate mode or whatever, you're surviving in that in whatever road you're on, in whatever occupation that is. You've got to survive in it and you want to succeed in it. Well, it may not be the place to be big emoting. It may not be the place to be, you can still have compassion and love for people, but you're not going to wear your heart out on your sleeve. And you've got to know what your audience is or what you're dealing with, and understanding like there's rings around you. Okay. There's rings moving outward. Inside's the most sacred ring, and that's you. And it's you to protect you. This is your most sacred boundary, is here. And then people come in close, but only, you get wiser, you know who to bring in close. And then if somebody you bring in too close and they do something that kind of violates it or doesn't work, there's no reason to get upset or angry about or anything. You just move them out to another ring, and you know that, okay, this is where they fit in in the periphery more. They're not going to be in close. I can love them. I can do all that, but I may not go in business with them. I may not be confiding in them in things. Mm-hmm. I may not be doing whatever. I'm going to keep them at that certain place. And that doesn't mean you wall off everything else and you just get all defensive about it. Just no, I have a choice on where I'm going to put people in my orbit.
Bingo. That's clear vision, actually. And I don't know. It's conceivable, I guess, that people possess that from the get-go, or maybe it's a learned thing. I don't really know the difference. But I do know that there is that difference. Some people can do that really skillfully, smoothly, and successfully. Other people I've seen along the way many times, actually, something goes wrong and they completely put that block up. And well, that's a waste, actually. But all of the positives of whoever that other person is are gone too. And there were some that wouldn't have even been there in your life in the first place.
Exactly. There's something, a beautiful interchange to happen between people, between souls. You just have to find out what's the appropriate relationship with that
Bingo. Yeah.
interchange, depending on where that person is in their life. If they're carrying a lot of anger or a lot of mistrust, or if they're defensive, or if they're whatever their stuff is with
Whatever.
all their stuff, you just find out the right place in you, and you don't blame the other person. This is your master of your domain, master of your world. This is my little universe here, and I get to take the planets, and we're gonna use that model, put the planets where they belong in orbit. And I feel like that, Maurice, is something. Well, for me, I had to learn that over time, because I didn't grow up with family that had good boundaries on stuff. Maybe if you had a parents that had boundaries, and you were witness that firsthand, and you could see how that works, or you taught that, you would know it. Otherwise, how are you going to learn it? How are you going to know? You're going to know through trial and error, which some people never learn.
Very
And
true.
some people do learn, right away with it. It's all our individual journey with it. But I feel like this is like such a key. Oh my God, I feel like this is such a key to not only surviving in the world, but thriving in the world.
That's it. We're talking about how to try how to thrive, not how to survive. We're not survivalists. Yes, we understand that whole milieu because that was part of the New Age movement as well.
Yeah.
The that whole movement. That's part of it. Just divorce yourself from organized society and go live in the woods and grow your garden. Well, I tell you what, I look at that and I say, I love tomatoes, but I'd get tired of eating the damn things if that was all there was on the table and every night. I like variety. So do you. So does everybody. And that requires interaction and cooperation amongst people.
Yeah.
And, you don't have to know everything about everybody to interact with them. And you were saying something else that got me, and I wanted to share this too. Ultimately, nobody walks in your shoes but you. So the closest person, whoever that is in your life, is still not walking in your shoes. So it is literally how close, but never identical, because they can't be identical to you. And that just doesn't work. So what our
Mhm.
closest, whoever we have around us as our inner circle, if you will, that's a phrase that everybody or a lot of people use. The
Mhm.
closest people to you are still not identical, and they'll do something that'll not be the way you would do it. So you look at it, well, that's different. Who's right? Who's wrong? Well, there is no right and wrong. There's just different ways of doing things. So you have to be part of this wisdom thing is being tolerant.
Yes.
Literally is. By the way, that's a virtue too, to be tolerant. That means you can accept that people will either do things out of ignorance, which is ignorance. It's because they don't know. So they do something and they think it's okay because they don't know any better. Well, you know better, so you say you're wrong. Well, no, you're not wrong. It's more accurate to do it this way, or more correct to do it this way than the way you did it. But I understood what you were saying.
Or to share with people, this is what I found works for me. That's a great way of sharing it. This is what I found works for me. Take it or leave it. It's not
That's
my
I
problem.
actually in my interactions, such as they are, um, operate that way. I don't
Yeah.
say this is the right way and that's the wrong way. I find for me this works the best, and then I listen to see how they respond, because maybe they know a better way and they'll respond and they'll say, yeah, I I see that, but I know an even better way. And then in my listening, I learn something.
I always have to coach people if I'm working with them or doing a creative project. It's like, just know that I will present my ideas with full conviction. And if you don't agree, well, you just present yours. Don't be put off by that, or don't be intimidated by it. Just present yours, because I'm telling you what, I can drop my idea like that if you sell me on your idea. But you got to show me and tell me, explain to me why it's a better idea. And I will have an absolute open mind, and I will shift because I want the best idea. I want the right thing to work. But you have to also know that I'm going to share with a lot of conviction because I really believe that I came up with the best one. But I'm
Yep.
willing to pivot, so to
There you
speak.
go. There you go. I can't help it. I don't know if I can carry this through a really super duper fine conclusion because I don't prepare just like you don't prepare. But I'm sitting here thinking there was a period when the computer came around for me, it was in 1999. And hell, there weren't there was only maybe a half a dozen people in the plant that had computers. And I knew half of them because I made sure I did. And then I learned from the beginning and everything. So it took a few years, and I still was living my life as well, which was not computers, it was people, like it had always been. And in that process, I ran into some of these uh, guru types that showed up via the interweb. And the one I actually liked a lot was a guy named Muji in India. He's actually, I think he's from fucking Cuba or Puerto Rico or something. He's he's an older guy. He's probably right now he's probably in his early 70s, I think maybe. And the thing of it is, he sat up there in his white robes, and of course he had 99% women in his audience and maybe one or two men. And he sounded like the fount of fucking knowledge, and everything he said it made sense. And I said, damn, how can somebody know all this stuff? Well, they must be a good scholar. They read all of the old books that had all the wisdom sayings in them and stuff. But he was talking as if it was him. And like I say, I was impressed with that guy for quite a while. I wouldn't say years, but I would say for me quite a while. And I listened to what he had to say. But what he was doing, he was pretty much talking using the I don't know. He was using Hindu stuff. I'm sure he was, and more than Buddhism. I think he was. Wait a minute. It might have been a data. That would have been Buddhism too. Anyway, that Eastern mythology, a mythological point of view, and the stuff he said, it really made a lot of sense. So I could see why people would listen to it because they sure as hell didn't hear that stuff in their Western educational system, and generally speaking, not in their families. People don't approach the world from that kind of perspective over here. So it was good information and everything, but I never once saw him say, that's a better idea than I just had. Never once do they ever do a thing like that. They come across as like the ultimate preacher of preachers. They know everything. And I think that's a mistake on their part. I actually do. They're not that smart. They're human beings. They're not gods walking around that possess supernatural knowledge. At least I don't think they are. I haven't heard one claim to be that way yet. But generally, you know what I'm talking about, or do you understand what I'm trying to convey?
Oh,
Be careful of people that never say, that's something I never thought about.
right.
Because then they have an agenda, I think, and nothing can upset that agenda or that program or that whatever they're preaching about.
And they may feel, they may have their message is they feel like that's their divine
yeah, they may.
purpose. This is what is I'm to convey to bring into the world, which is fine. There's other people that are coming from a place of the figuring out stuff, and I think we're
That's
still
most of
trying
it,
to
by the
work
way.
stuff through. A good example of this is a mutual friend of Maurice and I, and as my viewers out there, most of them are going to know Jason from Archaics, who chronology, yeah, you try to have challenge him on chronology. Good luck with you. You better be well researched to be able to have that conversation. But then when he goes off,
In his defense, I will offer this little bit anyway. He is looking for new information always. He is not walking around as if everything he knows is all there is to know. He's always he's a researcher is what he is. He's probably the
yes,
best researcher I've ever encountered in my whole life, and I've encountered a few that were damn good. Jason is probably the best researcher I've ever encountered. And when he says something, he speaks for he don't speak from him. He says, this is where I got this information. The implication of saying that is if somebody has something that refutes that from an equally valid source that Jason is unaware of, he'll listen and then he'll weigh it.
Yeah.
He'll say to himself, well, which one is better? Because they're not the same. And then he'll make a determination, and depending upon that determination, will alter or strengthen where he's at in the process. He's looking for new information. He's not looking just to say, I know everything and here it is, and stories in. Nobody else has a word in the conversation.
Well, where I wanted to go with this too, Maurice, is because that is exactly true. What I found with him is that when you get into like the spiritual range or the cosmological range, when he's talking about this is his ideas from it, he shares, oh, this is my idea. This is what I put together from all these different pieces and to the best of my knowledge and understanding. And I think that's the challenge thing when we're talking about spirituality. And what I try to do on my channel is to talk from a place that I know, or from wisdom I know based on my experience.
There you go.
That this is what I know. Now, these are other things that are like interesting ideas, but none of us really know what this gig is about. I mean, we have ideas, but does anybody actually deaden and crossed over and figure out and then come right back and tell us? No. Some people cross over a little bit, have out of body or near death experiences, or like me, I've had some out of body experiences, especially when I was younger. So there was some feeling like I was like the finger pointing at the moon, like you were saying. You know, I had a little bit like I had a little touch into the hem of the garment of that. So I have a little understanding, but I can speak of that little understanding. But the entire thing of like, what is it really about? What is this planet really? Is it a globe? Is it a flat? Is it moving through space? What is the universe? What is space? Are there planets out there? Who are the spirits? What are they doing? Why? And it goes on and on. It's just one we don't know for sure. It's part of the game that's going on here. We don't know for sure, but we can put together ideas based in our experiences and, you know, what resonates with us. But what I find in my older age is that there is many different fingers pointing at the room, and they're all as valid at the moon. They're all as valid as one another. So I have a perspective, you know, I have a vibrational imprint of who I am, and it's a perspective that comes with it. People will resonate with this and some will not, but they'll resonate with another finger pointing at the moon over here. Do you know what I mean? So it's just all like, it's a matter of resonance and what you're here to figure out. And like one person speaking about it, it's going to appeal to somebody else's another message.
Absolutely
just like
true.
Religions, where we have like kind of a gross thing of it, which I hate to bring religion into it because I'm not a big religion person. But you have all these different types of religion that appeal to different cultures, different people, etc. So that's just kind of a point on that, but it's not a great point because it's religions, which I feel when you formalize these things in that way, there's
there's
a lot of other stuff attached.
I'll just briefly touch on that one as well and let it go. Depends on what level of religion you're talking about, and then those conversations can go in many, many directions. And I think it's probably best to let it lie here anyway.
But the point is that there's differences, so different perspectives. One's not right or wrong. It just depends on who you are, what's working for you, and at that particular time in your life. You listen to a guru at one point in time. I listened to many, and I was involved in some different spiritual communities over the years. I've come out of all of that to a place where no, it's all inside me and I don't need anything, and I feel confident in my own connection and what, you know, and garnering my own wisdom over a life lived. That's
okay. Let me put it into 2 words, bringing it down to the ground, if you will. You're on your unique individual journey, and life is a journey. We've heard that all our lives. It is a journey. A journey of what, though? It isn't getting from necessarily from where I'm sitting to where you're sitting as a physical journey, although it can be defined that way. It's a growth process. It's a journey and it's growth at the same time. You're on a journey. You're traveling through time since we're in a time frame anyway. Mm-hmm. So it appears to us we're traveling through time and we're learning things, and internally that's what we define as growth, internal growth. And that apparently I have heard it maintained. I tend to believe it's likely true. It's a never ending thing.
Yeah. Which I think is very comforting to know that this whole thing of exploring and growing, that as spiritual beings, as immortals, that this goes on.
Well, that's never ending, isn't it?
It's never ending, which is it's kind of exciting because here we've got beginnings and endings. We have life and death. And we've got a very specific beginning and ending kind of journey in this where everything we do, the party starts, the party ends. The time clock starts, the time ends.
Yeah. Just, I'm sitting here listening to that, thinking to myself, yeah, I'm on borrowed time. 80 years old plus, you're on borrowed fucking time.
Hey, none of us know when that time comes up.
Yeah, but the sad reality is, if you look at the world at the next level down, we're all on borrowed time. Yeah. Because I've known tons of people that aren't here that were born when I was born. And a hell of a lot
of people younger, and
people a lot of them younger. Absolutely.
It's like there's one of these. I rest my heart and soul in the fact that there is the timing is perfect in this realm, and that death is just an illusion because we are immortals. So we think it's the ending of that person, but it's not. The person's just gone on to another experience. These are things, concepts that we can rest in if it resonates with us. We could rest in because they're comforting. Do we know that for sure? Well, where's the hard, fast evidence for it? There's anecdotal things but anyways, just the point really being that, I feel like we're here, we're incarnate, we have spirits, we're in bodies, and we've got to acknowledge that. And it's kind of learning this art of living, and we learn it through trial and error. Even if we're educated, someone teaches that, I'm telling you, I don't think it's just me, but I always had to test it. Like you said that, well, I'm going to figure it out for myself, and I'm going to just go ahead and do it.
That's another little,
touch it.
That's another little thing too. You can tell somebody, it's like a kid with the old lesson, the if you got an electric stove in the kitchen, you tell them that if it's red, and check it before you put your finger on it because it's freaking hot and it'll burn you. Well, you've heard the words. How many kids tested that? But once they didn't know it until they personally, physically tested it themselves. Then they freaking knew it. So a lot of the things, even though we hear the wise counsel and the wise advice, we still have to experience it for ourselves to know that it's really real for us. Isn't that the case? Can you hear me?
Oh, that is absolutely true. And I don't think that that's just unique to any individual. I think to varying degrees, we got headstrong people and then not maybe as headstrong. I was a very headstrong, especially as a little girl. And nobody could tell me nothing. I'm doing it. I'm going to experience it. But, this is another thing that you get wise about, because there's maybe the outside people telling you, but there's also your inside voice that you have to hone, because there's an inside voice telling you and trying to guide you, trying to help you. The immortal that contains us, our spirit is there trying to work with us. We've got to allow and listen. And I tell many times, the thing where you're growing up, and as a young woman, I had the little angel on one side and a little devil, if we want to use that analogy, on the other side. One would say, go this way. The other one would go that way. And I'm telling you how many times I went the way that I shouldn't have probably. I took the road.
we all can share that experience one way or another.
Exactly.
Some more dramatically than others, but nonetheless, we've all done it.
Yeah. And you know what I've learned from that, Maurice, is to listen. And I did this. I don't even want to go into it so much because I had to do some really serious boundaries. There was something I was entertaining about looking into as a spiritual thing. And, I kind of, before I went to bed, it's like, all right, I want to be clear. Is this the route for me or not? And, and I'm telling you, I woke in the middle of the night after multiple dreams. I wasn't remembering the dream, but then suddenly I got, one of my telltale signs is I call it like spiritual nausea, where my
Okay.
gut reacts and I feel like sick to my stomach. And this was like a deep, deep dissonance in my belly. I mean,
Oh
a
boy.
deep nausea. And right then I had to protect myself and seal myself off from that energy pattern and put it aside and go, no, that is so clearly not for me. Not that it's not right for someone else. It is so not right for me. Where when I was younger, I might have like, that's really intriguing because it's intriguing. And I may have gone, let's go explore it. And I didn't stop. I didn't ask for help with it from my higher self. And I didn't listen, but now it's like, okay, I can just save myself from, potential problems for me, maybe not for other
Right.
people, but this is not for me. Anyway, so that was just last night that happened. I wasn't sure I was going to talk about it, but it fits in that we got to do our own gut check on stuff. I think
Right.
to
Well, that's
really,
something, at least again, I would say I am speaking for most people. There's probably the unique ones or the odd ones, or maybe even a whole bunch of them that I don't know that operate on a different, kind of internal clocking and understanding and stuff that they don't have to go through all of this trial and error shit that apparently you've managed to find some of, and I have too along the way. Um, it takes time. It takes a whole lot of stumbling before you know how to avoid the shit that comes your way. But you eventually learn it. If the longer you're here, the more you know, about stuff. And
right.
that's what you're talking about. Is you've learned this. You're at 20 years old. You didn't know what you know at 60 years old.
Nope.
You knew, but you've forgotten half the stuff that you knew at 20. I'll bet you have. You look back and you couldn't recreate yourself as you were at 20 anymore because you're not there anymore. You're not that person anymore. You're walking around with the same identifications and identity, and everybody says, well, that's Lisa. But it's not the same person that was 20 years old by a long shot. And here
Oh
you
my,
are.
yeah. In fact, when I was up with the girlfriends a few weeks ago, I was talking about, I go, do you ever feel like you've lived like many lives within one life? Or we could say many
Absolutely true.
incarnations within one life. Because I have been like, that is not the person it's literally another person in the same meat sack, the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
flesh thing.
absolutely.
But it was a very different person. No, I can't recreate her. I can have compassion and love and blessing on her and not, get into any, but then just kind of bless it and let it go. I mean, the important thing is where you are in your process of refinement right now. And I feel like it's a process of refinement, refining who we are as an individual. And it's my process of refinement is different from yours and everybody else. It's my unique process. And, we got to give people some leeway in that, kind of coming back to that whole thing of not
Right.
judging, giving people the leeway in their process of
Mhm.
figuring out who they are. I mean, we're all here trying to figure out who we are and why we're here.
Yep, yep. And well, here we go. I'll give you the answer then. The more you can live in the ever present now, consciously, the more accurately and the more able you will be to do exactly what you just described. Now, how the hell you do that is an individual way of understanding and doing. And there's probably many psychologists and therapists that have all insights on how to approach that. But in the end, you have to still put your finger on the stove to know how to fucking do it or not do
Well,
it.
right. And that's when there's, some people sit down and meditate. My partner, he likes to sit down and meditate. He can be absolute, quiet and he meditates like that and he gets in his zone. For me, it's not like that. I do sit down. I have my little altar, special sacred area. I can sit down and stuff. But I work differently with stuff. For me, getting in my zone and finding a path, for each of us, we need to find what resonates with us. And at different times in my life, it's looked different too.
Right. Yeah,
It's,
absolutely. For me, it's funny. I had a part-time job for like 14 years after I was in my 60s when I started it. Okay. And I'd go on the road. I'd drive 300 miles a day, 150 miles one way and come back. Yeah, I went to a lot of different places. Yeah, Tallahassee, Montgomery, Alabama, New Orleans, Louisiana, that kind of thing, from where I live now. And I look back on that and I say, when I was driving, it was almost like meditating. There were times I was not even aware of where I was doing what I was, and yet I was driving perfectly well on the highway with everybody else. And it wasn't like I was getting great insights, although they would come to me. Thoughts would come out of nowhere. But it wasn't that I did that for the purpose. I just found myself when I was driving down the road, I was just in a zone, and I loved it. It was great.
Oh, I love road trips. I love driving distance because I get in a very meditative state. I don't listen to music. Sometimes if it's a long, long drive, I get tired of being in my own head, that I have books on tape, which I love to listen to, and it helps click the miles by real quickly. But for the most part, I find it super creative time for me. Like I'll have a little notepad next to me and I try to like write like and drive safely and jot down a few little notes, or if I have to pull over and really write something down. But I have profound insights that come in. And I find like doing, like when I do my handiwork, and like if I'm beading or embroidering or doing some kind of creative things with my hands, there's something that just flows, and this is engaged, but it lets something, another part of me just is able to create and things come in. I mean, so we find our own little ways of
We do.
uh, getting in that zone.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never listen to the radio in the car. Never.
Yeah.
It's just well, there's no music on that I would want to listen to nowadays anyway. But generally speaking, I just don't turn it on. I'm perfectly content to drive, and if there's no traffic, then I kind of look around, see the scenery,
Hmm.
and 99% of the time there's nothing extraordinary or memorable, but it flows on by, and it's a nice, comfortable place, and I
I
like
love
being
it too. And
out.
I love snacking. I start eating the minute I get in the car on a trip,
Really.
or on the plane. Yeah. And I'm not a compulsive eater by any sense of word, but when I get in the car driving, I can have a lot of snacks there.
Oh boy.
Oh man, but it's like know thyself, right, Maurice? It's just
Yeah.
coming to know thyself, where you are
Well,
right now, right
well,
now.
what you're talking about, and what I am too, without saying it, but I will say it. We're talking about how do you walk around in a state of peace, internal peace. One way or another, that's what we've been talking around the whole time. How do you find inner peace? How is it even talked about? We talk about it using different comparisons along the way. We go to spirituality. We go to external inputs and compare the two and weigh them and all that kind of thing. But what we're all looking for is just to feel good, to feel nice, to be at peace.
I'm going to do a video tomorrow that's about this, Maurice, and it's about, because that place of peace is a place of joy.
It is.
It's a place to be in a joy. So how do we continue to choose joy, go from joy to joy in our life? Especially, I mean, when there's big crossroads. So we're
There
going down the
are.
path of our life. We come to big junctures. A lot of times that can be in many ways an easier decision, because it's like, all right, I'm going to take the job because I'm going to get more money from it. And but I might have to move, and but what's going to be my biggest joy with it? I mean, we have like specific choices that we make with that, and to be at peace with the choice you make. But there are little roads all the time, and like how do we navigate those small roads to really keep, because it's I feel like it's a frequency. It's the joy of you is a frequency. It's a path. It's a timeline. We can talk all kinds of words and metaphors around it.
Yeah,
And but
quality
it
of life is one that is commonly used amongst people who speak in that kind of a language. It's a quality of life question. It's
right,
not
and it should be, and it shouldn't be a. I mean, a lot of people have, I think, a low standard. I'm surviving is my quality of life. Well, I meant that's not my quality. I want joy. I want abundance. My quality of life is a different quality of life, but I know specifically what it is for me. So when
right.
I'm making choices on things, I get always trying to like line that up to what really is the joy. What is the spark. It's for me, it's like following the spark of light. Something
Yeah,
lights me up. It's like I'm going to investigate that. And so I go there, but really it's not taking me there, but there was something else that came off of that brought me to where I need it to be. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so I followed that, like, well, what lights me up today? Well, I'm just gonna go for a drive and I'm gonna stop at my favorite coffee shop. Just because that's just feels like the right thing today because it's that bring me joy. So I go there and then I go to the little coffee shop and who walks in, you know, somebody or somebody you meet, and then something comes off of that. So I think
yep.
that life is trying to direct us through joy, through peace, through these positive emotional things. I think it only gets negative is when we don't listen, and then it comes in,
Right.
at different frequencies to try to wake us up.
Well, uh, there's ways of approaching that too. Some would say something like, you're allowing the universe to show itself to you rather than holding yourself up against the universe. I'm going to do it my way, my way, my way. And the universe is, okay, you can do that. And then you walk around bumping into walls for a long time until you get tired of doing that. You say, well, is there a better way? Or is there another way? And then you run into people that will you're at first of all, you got to ask the question to yourself, is there a better way? And then you start listening to people who claim to know what the better way is. And then you listen to them for a while and they got things to offer that you hadn't considered before. And you say, well, that's a good idea. I'll try that. May then,
Yeah.
but but then there's traps in that. And you learn about those, and then you say, well, it, that was a lot of good information, but that's not. I don't need to keep listening to that information. That's one of those. That's where we can get trapped into what we call a rabbit hole or other things of similar nature. And we find out where you're talking about now, which I agree with. It's in the end, the only real answer, it comes from within anyway. But you got to walk a long ways, generally speaking, to even recognize that's a possibility. Once you recognize that's a possibility, you say, is that even freaking possible? And you say, well, yeah, I know this. And then all of a sudden the inputs come into you. It's as if the key is allowance, allowing
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
possibility
And to
to
be
exist.
specific, the allowance, what we're talking about is really, for me, this is how I see it. The allowance is like not having a hard membrane out there. We sometimes get bitter with life and we just get these hard blocks there. Their ego gets in the way or
Yeah, that's true.
preconceptions of things. But you get a soften, like with your internal thing, your internal membrane with your higher self. And that's where the thing is of allowing it to have like this flow, this sacred flow going on so that you can hear the wisdom of who you are, can work with you on stuff. And it'll
Bingo.
guide you and point you. Still make your decisions. It's free will. You're not an autotom. You're not there just to like, I'm channeling my spirit. I'm just doing spirit. No, we're in a physical body. We're physical human beings, that are working in conjunction. It's the two parts to the thing, to the creation.
Yep.
And both, and we're totally honored, and our free will is honored by our higher self of at
Yeah.
all times.
Isn't that a bit?
Nothing's ever imposed.
Yeah. And boy, oh boy, it is that a journey. I know a cat wouldn't want to make it, or a dog, as great as they are, and they don't go through the shit we do.
Oh my God, I know. It's just it's on one hand, I think like how complicated it all is. Like that is just a complicated ass thing being a human. And then other points when I get into my piece and I get honed in, I'm like, wow, it's just really simple. So it's both.
It is. Yeah. What do they call this? A paradox, among other. They call it some other confusing terms too, but in a way, it's paradoxical around here. You got the best and the worst at the same time.
Yeah,
How you gonna deal with that one, baby?
exactly. We have our light side of ourselves, and then we have a shadow side. We've got like this, we've got the contrast. We're in a world of contrast. So just
Very
get
much
used
so.
to it.
Well,
Just get
that's
used to it.
yeah. Well, they another way they call it is duality for sure. That means
Duality.
two sides,
Yep. Yep.
but
And
we
it has
couldn't
this,
have this world without it.
well, exactly because this is the design of this world is a world of duality. So I've heard, I don't know for sure, but other realms have different sets of what do you say container around it of how things are. There's other
Yeah,
rules with it.
rules of
This is
engagement.
ours here, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, well, that's not us. Not now anyway. Maybe sometime in the future at a different stage, and we'll look back upon where we are now and say, well, you used to be 20 once such a long a time. You also used to be 3 years old too. And you certainly can't recreate what that was like, but you have
And
it
you
in your
certainly
memory
don't
bank.
want to. You certainly don't
No,
want to.
but you've got it in your memory banks, but not with very much detail anymore. That's another thing when you look back on your past and using your memory functions, whatever that really is. But we do have memories. We say we do. We can recall things from what we experienced in through our lives.
Mhm.
But you look back accurately and you say, but I don't remember everything about it. I just remember a little bit. I remember the highlights, the cliff notes, if you will, of our lives is what we remember. The high points and the
Right.
low points. The in between points, that's everyday mundane. We don't even remember. Hell, in my case, I don't remember half the time what I did yesterday. I have to sit down and really think about it.
Especially if we're really in the flow with things. Sometimes when we're done talking, Maurice, because I have a little notepad here where I write down some of the topics. Because
Uh-huh.
then I go back to think, okay, I have to make my thumbnail for YouTube and I'm going to have to bullet point at some topics on it or do a description. And it's like,
Yeah,
well, what did we talk about?
yeah. Let me listen to this thing again and actually listen instead of participate.
Right? Because of it's just flowing and then it flows and it flows out and then it's the next thing. So I'm like,
Yeah.
well, what was that? It was really great, but it went
I don't
through.
remember what I said.
It was
Oh, I do
beautiful.
that with
What
you
was
even
it?
sometimes. I do that with you sometimes. I say, hell, I don't remember what I just said. And I'm not lying either.
Oh, I know. I like when if I'm in the flow, sometimes something will come out and it'll be like, wow, that was really profound, but I have no idea what I just said. It's just
That, that happens to me quite a bit, actually. I don't fight it anymore. I just say, okay, and move on.
yeah, there it went. It's yep, did its thing, it's done.
Hope it worked out,
Yeah.
whatever it was.
Yeah, I hope it was helpful to the other person
Yeah,
because I was in the flow.
yeah. I'll tell you what, I'll say it again from my own personal experience. The more you're in the flow, the happier you are, and the easier things go for you. Now, how the hell you get there? That's your unique individual journey. Good luck, babe. But it is possible. And again,
You got to figure I
you and I,
was
and the people we talk and you talk to because you have the program, they're trying to help people see ways of which it can be achieved from complete not knowing. They offer their best advice on how it can be helpful for them to listen and maybe eliminate some of the bullshit that they don't even know is in front of them. And and
right.
and they're all doing their damn best to help people find themselves is what they're doing. They're helping people to find themselves. That's way showers.
Exactly. I was just going to say, I love that. And I feel like the real powerful way showers are the ones that understand that. They understand that they're
They
sharing
do.
from their experience, they're sharing a perspective. It's not the ultimate or penultimate, it's their unique perspective. You put it out there, and it's just like if it blesses you and helps you, fabulous. If it doesn't, that you find what works for you, and you don't have to judge the other thing. You don't have to badmouth it. You don't have to do nothing like that. It just isn't resonate with you. Great. Way showers, there's many of them, many more and more that are stepping into their place of, their, we should say, their divine,
Oh,
abilities and their mission. And great, because there's so many people out there. It's so different that it's not going to be for everybody.
of course
So
not.
yeah. And I have to share with you this morning, Maurice, that I was absolutely in my happy place. I got up about 5:30 and I'm working on my second book, and it's all been written and rewritten, like probably 9 different drafts. And I'm going through just hopefully to get it all together in this draft. And it's just my happy place. It's the hardest creative thing I've ever done is writing a book. And I write fiction, I write metaphysical adventures. And it's the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's so rewarding to me. So I got done. I was just like, oh, that was so fun, trying to describe and create a world out of nothing, and people and characters and all of that. And, so it's a happy place I found later in life, and a challenging place, but the rewards are, really,
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's in your past already. So that's a moment you spent in time that was enjoyable to you as opposed to horrendous to you. Well, if there is such a thing as a scoreboard in the sky, that's a good one. That goes on the right-hand side, not the left-hand side.
Well, you can build off of that. You can
Yes, you
build
can.
something generative off of that. Like if you're in a job, let's just say jobs, because I mean, we're both not like in that particular grind anymore, so to
Oh, that's
speak, but
true.
it is like a grind. Yet people, finding your true purpose I think is so important. And there's no reason we have to sit in a grind, because I feel like we really could work. And this is a huge subject, but I just to touch on it quickly is that when we align with who we really are and what our real gifts are at this point in time, whenever that is, that there's a path for us. We have to be open that there's always a pathway for us. It's just a matter of we have to start imagining it. We have to start opening to it. We have to start asking for it. It's not going to
Yep.
come if you don't ask for it. If you want to just sit in drudgery and I'm so unhappy where I am, well, okay, so you're going to be so unhappy where you are. But you start dreaming a bigger dream of
That's
what you
true.
want, which that's, I think, one of the skills that unfortunately are one of the, yeah, it's just like a skill is part of the skill of being a human is the power of dreaming. And especially look at it like politics right now. Everybody wants to say what's wrong with everything and blah, blah, blah. Well, just start dreaming, not like of which candidate, whatever, but start dreaming of what you would like your world to look like. What would a village that you'd want to be a part of look like? What would harmony look like amongst people? And start feeling a vision into creation of what it would look like instead of what's wrong with it.
Well, women do that all the time. That's part of your nature, by the way. You create that within your own home. That's
Yeah.
that you have control of pretty much. Not everything, but you control most of it within the home. You walk into a home, it's the woman that decorated it. It's the woman that created the ambiance of the place. Men don't. That's we can, but that's not really our nature. Women do that as a matter of course. It's important to them way more so than a man. A man will sleep on the frickin' floor, but yeah, he'd much rather sleep on a feather bed. But he's not
But
going
he's
to. I
right,
just
but he can still dream the dream of what it would look like from the masculine perspective.
he
What's
can.
important to a man,
He
what is
can.
important to a woman.
Oh,
And we're
I live in
all
a house. I'm
blends.
a man alone, and it's still decorated the way Judy decorated, and she left in 2010. But I like it, and I'm not sitting here trying to rearrange it and make it mine, if you will. I part of it I still remember Judy, and I honor her. So I keep it around. It's a remembrance to me in a way, but it's comfortable as hell. And who made it? She did, not me. Yeah, I was out there doing the manly thing, fighting the world, so to speak, to bring the lucre home. to be able to do it because that's the society we live in. But that was my role. But she created this place, and
Yeah.
it's
And even I
again,
gotta say, Maurice, because even I'm a woman that supported two marriages with my business and my skills, and I've always been very much a breadwinner and you know creating income and doing stuff like that. Yet still, home was very important to me. It's not my partners didn't necessarily. I've had some that could cook and some that couldn't cook, which was nice to have somebody be able to cook for you. But
yep,
generally speaking, is the feminine part sets kind of the tone in the home.
yes, and
And
all women
definitely.
listening to this, you can at least do that in your own homestead, and do that first. Create your living environment, and you do that. That's part of your nature. I maintain that to be the case. Yeah, there's probably an odd woman that is more masculine than I am. However, generally speaking, that's what you guys do, and you can do and know that. No, I can't create the world across the street. That's not my job, and I don't need to even concern myself with it, generally speaking. But in my own house, I can create the environment that I want to live in, and those that are closest to me, which would be in most cases your partner
Well,
or
and it starts with the dream, right? It starts with understanding what feels good to you. What
yeah,
would be a beautiful, peaceful environment? Some people want very simple. They don't want a lot of clutter around. They would maybe want a small home or what. You can kind of see my little office here. I have things. I like beautiful things around. So I'm not like a pared down aesthetic isn't my aesthetic. That's not warm and cozy to me. So just know I like space to move around in. Like a little tiny home, wouldn't be my choice, maybe my go-to cabin or something, but just find what your choice is. What is your dream for you? And then go about create it within your means. You have a way of
that's
creating
it.
that within your
Yes,
means,
within your
you know.
means. Even
Mhm.
honest to God, I have never lived the life of a hobo, which is the old fashioned way of expressing the homeless people nowadays. And I know they're around, but I guarantee you, even within that world, there are people that have it that still do that, even within their little lean-to, if you will. They do it. They find because that if they can't control anything, they can still control the environment the immediate environment they live in. And that's pretty basic, pretty primitive. There's no two ways about that. And then of course, most of us, especially we're listening to this on an electronic device. I like my home computer more than anything. However, it takes a certain amount of resources to even have this. And in order to get those freaking resources, unless you're, and none of us, or most of us are not, what do they call it, inheritance babies or something like that,
Trust fund
That's
babies.
it, trust fund babies. No, I wasn't one of those either. So you had to go through the horse shit to get here. So we have life experience in that field. We've all done versions of it, and there's all kinds of horror stories. But you know what? There's actually good stories too that we could tell about things that we've done along the way. Generally speaking, people don't talk about that. They're there, but they don't. They always talk about the bad things that happen to them.
And that has been like a struggle that I've been very cognizant of for many, many, many years now is what part of my past do I want to keep alive? And a lot of times when I've looked back at all the things that weren't right about it, as opposed to what was right about it. And that's kind of a challenging one. Our consciousness tends to move towards dissonance, I
Isn't that
feel.
true? Yeah, it really is. I
It does.
don't
And
know why that is
what's
or
that
how, but it
about?
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
You
is
know,
true.
what And yeah, I mean, there's rabbit holes with that we won't go in today, but there's things that
Yes,
are very
very true.
curious to me about, choosing the different timelines. And they say you could actually go back and you can, kind of repattern your past. You can repattern like it's malleable. It's all happening right now. So if you look in conceptually, it's all happening right now outside of the time space continuum. So it's all in one big now, So you
Wow.
think then logically what you can do, because all happening now, you can make different choices in the past and it'll change your timeline right now and free
Isn't
you up
that
for a different future.
I've heard that said more than a few times about changing your timeline and changing your past. And I thought, well, maybe they can do it. I don't even know what that means, much less being able to do it internally. I wouldn't say that because then I just, open up the door to a big, you're wrong and here's how you're wrong and shit. I didn't want that. But I'm looking at that what you just said, and something dawned on me as I listened. My observation is accurate. Most people talk about the bad things that happen to them in their lives, and I probably have as well. I don't talk as much as most people, but I still talk. And even when I internally think, what do I think about? Do I think about, okay, I was in the military. What memories do I have of the military, and what pops out at me? Well, there's all right. That's 4 full years. Lots happened to me. I was in different environments, different situations. I don't remember 90% of it, obviously, on a daily basis, mundane stuff. But there were highlights. And now I have a choice. And that's something that most people don't even consider they have a choice. But there were good things that happened to me when I was in the military. There were joyful things that happened to me in the military. And then there were things that were less comfortable, if you will. That's just one short period. I've been all over the freaking place doing a lot of different things. I can go back to any one of those if I can remember what it was, where I was, and what I was doing. But I can do that, and I come up with the same viable alternative. What do I choose to look at? Do I look at the highlights or the lowlights?
Do you
And
know
you
what
know what? I want to make this just to make it completely done. Then I'll shut up again.
Mm-hmm.
If I choose to look at the good things that happen to me, as opposed to just highlighting the bad things or the uncomfortable things, I got a feeling that would change my present some kind of way. I have never investigated that personally. I'm going to try that just to see. Okay, I'm done.
Because you know what, Maurice, we are talking about it when we latch on to the dissonance of the past, it's almost to substantiate where we are right now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
It's
do.
just like, yeah, it's because that's the line that I'm working with. So what they're saying is like change that line. Like if you're in this real place of peace and harmony and real centeredness and all this like the fun thing, the good stuff, the spiritual stuff, then what would we remember? The stuff along that line, that lineage, right? It's like that lineage of
Another
creation. That's
great
what,
idea. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
lineage. I've heard that word mentioned tons of times. I always equated that to, bloodlines, family history. And oh shit, I'm related to somebody in the 1300s and he was famous and shit like that. That makes me and them special and all this shit. But lineage is your heritage, but that's a mixed bag too. There's good and bad in that. And usually when you're using lineage, you're talking about the official history that you've been told and you can find out on your own, through research. The lineage you're talking about is an internal lineage. And you can create, you can stop the bullshit if you just choose in your own life anyway. You can change your focus in the present. It's the only place you can do anything anyway. We all know that. We just don't practice it as a conscious thing. But you can change, in that sense, you can change your past by the way you interpret it. And that
Absolutely.
allows you a new path that is different from the one you had thought was the only one.
And it changes your right now. And that's the most
Yes.
important thing. It
Yeah.
changes your right now. And then you can move forward and then you create a different future. Because
That
it's
is a
not being
bell ringer.
imprinted by that stuff. And that's a timeline. That's a timeline right
It
there.
is.
And
That's
that's
a
a
bell
personal
ringer,
lineage.
really, really, really strongly. And I will say, even though I picked up on it, you said it first, just so you know. So I'm not the only one in here that knows shit.
I know a little shit here and there. I have my own little, yeah, stuff that comes through. But that's because I have for years now, I've practiced something called repatterning dreams. So when I'm in like a dream and I'm like having a dream and things are going to shit in the dream,
Hmm.
really going to shit, and you're starting to wake up out of it, and you're like, oh, you're becoming a little conscious of it. And I'm in this shit thing. And you know what? I go in and I just like I come as I come out of it, it's like, all right, that's not what I want. I'll go back into the dream and then I'll consciously change what happens in the dream, changes
Wow.
the outcome to an empowered one. And it's like, no, they're not going to do that to me. And I'm going to do this and and I just recreate in my best imagination of the highest and best me, how they would handle that. And you know what? It changes things in my waking life. And like I say, I've done this for years and it absolutely is really powerful on overcoming stuff in your world.
Cool. That's not one of
Yeah.
the vehicles I use, but I'll bet you there's people out there that can readily identify with what you just said in their own lives. And they say,
Yeah.
damn, I've done that too. You know,
I
they can
wrote about that
identify.
in my first book. I wrote about that. It was part of the heroine's journey was learning how to repatterning her dreams,
Yeah.
and I use an example of like the one we all have is like you all of a sudden you wake up or you're in the classroom, you realize like you're naked or you're somewhere and you're naked and everybody else has clothes on. I don't know if you have those dreams, but once in a
Well,
while I have those. And instead of being like mortified and just, oh my God, and you're just like, oh, it's just to like go back in the dream and go, yep, here I am, and not have it phase you because it's all, symbolic of something else, and it's symbolic of feeling naked and
well, you're
afraid for
vulnerable.
your
You're totally
vulnerable
vulnerable when
and
you
just
need.
become not become
Sure.
that just like here I am and I've had that in dreams then all of a sudden everybody else is naked and everything else is it's all and it's an empowering thing.
Well, I'll tell
um
you what, at least the guys in the room wouldn't have been disappointed. The girls might have all kinds of nasty things to say, but the guys, they say, oh boy.
they'd be like you go girl.
Absolutely. And that goes across the generations too, believe it or not.
Yeah, well nowadays you don't know because everybody is just all
Well,
there. They've
today's
got
world's so crazy anymore. I don't even try to understand it. I mean, I do.
I
But
don't even go near it in any of my videos. I don't even touch on that because it ain't my world. Do you know what I mean? That's just not my world. I
uh,
can't speak of it
you
because
got you
it's
got
not
better
my I'm
things
not
to
in
do.
that.
You've got better things to do in your life that are more immediate, more satisfactory to your well-being. Which again, we're all about our own internal and external well-being. That
Yeah.
is, we're here, so we all want to do it as pleasantly and easily as we possibly can. And you and I are talking about ways that could be useful and helpful to people, or just reassuring you, say you're not the only one that's doing this shit or
I
trying
mean,
to do this.
exactly. And I'm going to come from a white woman, heterosexual. That is my experience. I can't talk from any LGBTQ, NBC, MEMO, whatever all this stuff is now. I can't talk about that because that's not my experience,
Right?
and I can't talk about different ethnicities because that's not my experience.
No, you
So
know
I
it
couldn't,
intellectually, and you could make those kinds of arguments if you're in a, that kind of a setting, but that's not where you're coming from. You're not speaking from that point of view. You're just aware of it. You're aware of a lot of things. You know mathematics. You're not a mathematician, technically, but you know how to add and subtract and multiply and divide. We all know. Well, I don't even know that we all know, but most of us know how to do that. You get into
mhm.
the next levels, algebra, geometry, and God knows up the chain, they got names I haven't even heard of in my life, defining certain specific areas of that particular field. That's that specialization thing that society offers to us. There's always way more than any one individual, this, can
Mhm.
contain within themselves anyway. None of us are the fount of all knowledge. That is not our ability. We don't have that potential built into us as human beings. So we have to recognize
Yes.
that we have limits and we can't know everything about everything. We can't even know anything about everything about a certain subject. All we
Oh,
do.
I suffer from a lot of FOMO working up, this fear of missing out,
I know what
you
that means.
know,
Yeah.
a lot of that. And that's another thing as they get older is like, nope, this is my wheelhouse. This is my responsibility.
Yep.
And that you're there. It's just, I've like really come to terms with that in a way that's so much nicer than having it.
Yeah. 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 Another thought just occurred. You can only captain your own ship as best you
Yeah,
can. You can't captain the ship that's right next to you. That's somebody else is running that one, not you. And you don't know enough to be able to do that.
but
You
if
might
you
be
know
able,
your way through a tricky, the reefs and the tricky route through, and you found a way through, you're going to say, "Hey, look at this is my route through. I found it."
yeah,
If you want to try that route, it's not. It's like follow me, but in a sense, like here's a map that I found, and it's
yep,
gotten me through life, and I'm sharing my map with you. I mean, I
yep,
like that analogy. I'm sharing my map with you. If you want to use it, great. If you find a better map for you, or you use it for this time, this go around, then your next journey, you need a different map for it, then you'll find somebody that has another map, or you
yep,
find your own
absolutely.
map,
And you
you
have,
know?
and if you run into somebody that doesn't know their way through the passage you just went through, you can say, "I have a map," and you
Exactly.
perform the same function for them, and you offer it to them.
Exactly.
And if they're from your point of view, if they're smart, if they're wise, they'll follow you. If they're not, they're gonna run aground somewhere. And not one, and then they're gonna be saying, "Oh, woe is me! Oh, woe is me!" And the world hates me, and all that kind of shit. You say, "Okay, come back and say if you have interactions with them, you come back and say, try following this path again. It works. Here's a map."
Yeah, you
And
don't
then say, "Well,
don't
one of
say I
these
told
days
you
they're gonna
so.
say, okay, I'll try that." And once they do, then they get through the path.
Right. It's oh my God, it's so true. Oh, okay, Maurice, we've been going, I think, an hour and a half now. That's like
We
one
have,
of our
we have,
our more
yeah,
winded conversations.
yeah. Didn't seem like it, but it is.
I know it is. It's just really zoomed by today. I love it. I've got some notes here. I'm gonna when I go to edit it because we
Good
did
luck.
freeze a little bit, but I'm hoping that the Zoom didn't freeze up while all this was going on. So I'll do some editing and then I get to hear us once again. Get to
Yep.
hear how just smart we are.
Oh boy. And and we say we don't know it all. We only know what we know, and we're trying to, share the good parts and
Oh my God.
avoid some of the bad things if you're lucky that we kind of walked across.
It's so true. Okay, well, I'm going to sign off for a bit. Let's stay on for a minute, but I'm going to stop recording and we'll go from there. All right. So, everybody, peace from within. As always, this is the Rebel Crone and Maurice signing off for another Thursday. And know we love you and we believe in you and you find your way. It is there. It's there in you. And it's also there. There's way showers out there that can be helpful. And if I can speak for both of us, Maurice, I hope that some of the stuff that we dropped today is helpful. We
Yep.
sure enjoyed it.
Yep. As usual.
Okay, bye.